Ladies and gentlemen, the capital of Ireland, Dublin, has descended into chaos. It happened last night. Take a look at the pictures. Riots, arson and unrest, the worst of its kind in Ireland in years. Buses were burnt, hotels and restaurants were vandalized, shops were looted. The bedlam you're seeing on your screens was triggered by a knife attack that left 3 young children injured. The riots that you're seeing began when a far-right mob of about 400 to 500 descended to protest this knife attack that they claimed was perpetrated by an immigrant. The mob jeered the national police and then clashed with them, a situation that is unprecedented in Ireland. The motive behind the knife attack remains unclear. The police is considering various possibilities, including potential terror links. However, the subsequent protests and acts of arson are being attributed to radicalization via social media, particularly associated with far-right ideology. Ireland has seen record immigration this year, and there have been protests and rallies that have carried placards saying, and I quote, "Ireland is full." So far, 34 protesters have been arrested. The Prime Minister, Shreya Dhoundial, has lashed out at them, saying they are not patriots but haters. He has also said that these rioters have shamed Dublin and Ireland.
This is not who we are, this is not who we want to be, and this is not who we will ever be. These people claim to be defending Irish citizens, yet they put in danger the newest and most vulnerable and most innocent people. Those involved brought shame on Dublin, brought shame on Ireland, and brought shame on their families and themselves. These criminals do not do what they did because they love Ireland. They do not do what they did because they wanted to protect Irish people. They did not do it out of any sense of patriotism, however warped. They did so because they're filled with hate. They love violence, they love chaos, and they love causing pain to others. Looting a shop was more important to them than protecting the lives of our children.
This is not who we are as a people. Ireland has built a modern and inclusive society. It is something precious that we should all work to hold. And we understand the need to respect other, the need to respect difference, and the need to respect the dignity of every human being.
Ireland, once known for emigration, is undergoing a transformation. It has become home to a large number of immigrants, with around 20% of its current population born elsewhere, outside Ireland. This societal shift is contributing to the rise of far-right ideologies within the country, especially given its crumbling healthcare and chronic housing problem. Ireland's National Police is in no doubt about what the motive of these rioters was.
This is not a failure of personnel. All members of An Garda Síochána responded to this. Everyone stood up to the plate in terms of their response. I now have to look to the tactics that we have for public order. We have not seen public order situations like this before. This may be behaviour which is apparent in other countries, but I think that we've seen an element of radicalisation. We have seen a group of people who take literally a thimble full of facts and make a bathtub of assumptions, hateful assumptions, and then conduct themselves in a way which is riotous and disruptive to our society. We then have to respond to that in terms of our tactics and training. But there's no failure here. There's no failure. This is regrettably how protests have moved on, and now we have to graduate and have a proportionate response.
Now, while the far-right sentiment is in its nascent stage in Ireland, in large parts of Europe, it has already found root. Across Western Europe, far-right parties are gaining ground, influencing mainstream political agendas and even securing key ministerial positions. In the Netherlands, a country regarded as one of Europe's most liberal, Geert Wilders, a far-right politician, achieved a significant victory in the general elections, positioning himself for the role of Prime Minister. Wilders, who advocates banning Quran, Islamic schools and asylum seekers, is well known in India for supporting BJP's Nupur Sharma over her comments on Prophet Muhammad. Then there is Italy's Giorgia Meloni, another far-right figure. She holds the distinction of being Western Europe's first far-right post-war prime minister. Despite her party's significant electoral success, Meloni adopts a strategy of normalizing economic policies while quietly advancing a cultural war agenda. In France, Marine Le Pen scored a record 42% in last year's presidential election, and her far-right national rally went on to win 89 of the 577 seats in parliament, which is an 11-fold increase. The party operates with one objective: the concrete improvement of French people's lives. In Spain, the nationalist Catholic conservative Vox is the third largest party and recently doubled its vote in regional and municipal elections. From Austria to Finland, Sweden to Germany, whether termed as far-right or as an inclination to look inwards, the trend reflects a broader shift in European politics. It raises questions about the underlying causes and potential implications for the region. Dr. Swasti Rao is an associate fellow at the Manohar Parrikar IDSA, looks very closely at Europe, joining us on the broadcast. Dr. Rao, thank you very much for your time. As we look at these pictures coming to us from Dublin, and the situation since has, of course, calmed down, what do you put it down to?
Very good evening to you, Shreya. It's good to be back with you. Well, yes, it's unfortunate. And you know what is so unfortunate about this is that Ireland likes to be known as the land of 100,000 welcomes. You know, that is the nickname that Ireland has in the community of European states. And what it reflects is the kindness and hospitality of its people, etc. And to see the kind of rioting that I just saw in Dublin is something which is very unprecedented. The natural question is why? Okay, and you already mentioned, and I think you kind of hit the nail on the head when you said that there has been a rise in the right-wing politics across Europe. What we are seeing today is a product of what has been happening in the last 40 years or so, right? I mean, there has been a growing, so to say, dissatisfaction of the people in the way the European communities have been governed. That's on the one hand, but for sure, the kind of rise that you see lately, you mentioned Vox, you mentioned AfD in Germany, you mentioned Marine Le Pen in France, etc., etc. We saw Sweden. Now we're seeing Netherlands. All this is happening because that anti-immigrant sentiment is taking root in Europe. And I think one has to understand that if you want to understand the politics properly, that's one part of it. That is, you know, the attitude, you know, what is the psychology behind it. But Shreya, I work very closely on this topic, and I can definitely tell you that whatever is happening, it might have differences, right? So what is happening in France could be a little bit different from what is happening in Italy and so on and so forth. But what is common is that this is a situation which is mismanaged. So it is a mismanaged mass migration problem across Europe. And when I say Europe, Ireland is a part of the EU. Ireland is not in the Schengen area, but it is a part of the EU. Therefore, it is a signatory, or it is there with the common EU asylum law. And that common EU asylum law is an embarrassment, to say the least. They have been trying, there've been internal fighting within the 27 member states to try and come out with a solution that is acceptable to all, but it is not happening. And why is it not happening? It is not happening because the people in Europe, they feel that they are being completely taken over by those that that talk about erasing their identity, about stabbing and about kidnapping and about all these writings. So this is the reason why this is happening. There is a massive mismanagement of mass migration. On the other hand, Europe needs migrants. Why? Because they are aging populations. Ireland is relatively better than others, like Italy, for example. They have not had a baby, in the last, I think, 1 year or so. Some data had emerged that they did not really have a baby. And this is something alarming. Ireland is better than that, but they are still dependent on migrants for a lot of their work, and especially a lot of their, labor, low level labor, especially. They also need to tackle their own societies, where for decades, Shreya, I can tell you, they have been tackling low wages. These are societies where, most of the wages are basically taken in taxes. So people don't really have an incentive to have children, and they have to really radically change their societies if they want to tackle this problem. And let me also finally tell you, one of the biggest problems that happens in Ireland specifically is that in Ireland, this problem is going out of hand because Ireland has one of the longest waiting times for asylum seekers in Europe. And I'll just tell you what that waiting time is. On an average, when an asylum seeker comes and applies in Ireland, they have to wait for at least 23 months to hear on the initial decision. And even if they are prioritized, there are cases that are prioritized, then that waiting time is reduced to 14 months. And that's all. I mean, it's like more than a year, more than 2 years. Okay. And the prime minister out there, and I mean, I have high regard for the prime minister. He's a doctor, by the way. He's a medical doctor by profession. And he is so visibly upset about what is happening in Ireland. But let me also tell you that for many, many, I would say there are so many reports, there are so many suggestions that are saying that this gentleman has to really change this long waiting period. What happens in this long waiting period is that then the asylum seekers are forced to pitch tents here and there, wherever they get, a window, wherever they get any space on the roads. And then because of these kind of things, I mean, like what you just saw about the stabbing, this unfortunate stabbing, then there is an anger in the people. Just in, I think, May this year, if I'm not wrong, just a few months ago, there was a very disturbing incident where an entire refugee camp was set to fire because the people are angry. They don't want these kind of people who are mismanaged and who don't really have records to come into their countries.
Okay.
So the problem is that it is a problem of governance. I think that the Prime Minister should really do something about this internal structural flaw in the Irish law, which is that it has the longest waiting periods in all of Europe. Okay. And then finally, they have to find out some ways to tackle these asylum seekers. They make their own organizations. One of the best known one is called Movement of Asylum Seekers in Ireland. It's abbreviated as MASI. And they are the ones. So it's like this, the tussle, this tug of war. And really the governance structure has to internally change for them to have some kind of a way out. Otherwise,
we've seen the manifestation on our screens right now. And interestingly, as the Prime Minister battles this wave of anger against immigrants, fact is that he himself is of Indian origin. I think that is something that is well known. We'll leave it there for the moment, Dr. Swasti Rao. I'm out of time. Thank you very much for joining us. With that, ladies and gentlemen, it's a wrap from me. But up next, we have actor Salman Khan in an exclusive conversation with Mirror Now. Do take a look.